The JLP candidate for the Kentyre division in St. Andrew East Rural, Mr. Kelvin Clark, is seeking a declaration that the local government elections for polling divisions 82A and 82B is void. Mrs. Holness is taking the EOJ to court to ask the court to declare that those two PDs be void and therefore would require the two PDs alone for a rerun. Hello everyone, Karen Cecilia here. Trust everyone is great. Staying out of the sun, it's not a good thing. Try to be close to water, keep hydrated, and I am fine. So, Mark Golden and Dayton Campbell, everything starts with these people. They went out in public denying the election results, putting out results of their own, bullying the press to put out their results, saying they won an election that they lost. Mark Golden and Dayton Campbell. What they did was kind of a seismic shift in how we operate as a democracy. Mrs. Holness's actions to go to court to get the court to overturn an election result that she doesn't like is an aftershock of that. The attempt of throwing shades at our electoral system is being led by the Speaker of the House, wife of the Prime Minister, Member of Parliament for St. Andrew East Rural, Mrs. Juliet Holness. With all that have transpired within the last few weeks, I have concluded that Mrs. Holness is embarking down a lane that has no turns. There is no off-plank. There is no side road where she can decide in her mind that she's going to turn off of it. She has set herself on a task, on a road that don't have no turn. She's behaving irrational and dangerous with this court matter that she's pursuing. This is not the candidate, Mr. Clark, doing this. This is not him. This is her, Mrs. Holness. Him, in other words, would lose it. I don't even understand what she's doing. This is all about her. Listen to me, Jamaican people. Our electoral system is one that has evolved over the past 30 years. We moved from voting out boxes in garrisons to one man, one vote. One man, one woman, one vote. That's where we moved to. It was a big thing for our people to be able to exercise their God-given right to elect their political representatives. Our system is not perfect. No election system throughout the world is perfect. It's a system that requires update from time to time. We could use an update now. We could use an upgrade and modernized version that would not disenfranchise young people who turn 18 on election day or people who move from one place to another. We need an updated and modernized system that makes it easier to vote. But what we have, we should cherish, because there are places in this world where people don't get the chance to elect their representative. Right now, in this already fragile democracy that has been made more fragile by our leaders, it's not easy to vote. There are too many hoops and too many requirements other than a photo ID and a birth certificate. It's hard to vote. So Mrs. Holness is reportedly taking the PNP candidate for the Kentyre division to court, Mrs. Vivian Brown Bond, who just won the Kentyre division by 32 votes. Court papers have been filed and served on Mrs. Bond Brown. So, let's dive a little bit into this action by Mrs. Holness. And let me tell you what this is all about and how it's all going to pan out in the end. East Rural St. Andrews is a swing constituency. It has gone from 2 terms JLP to 3 terms PMP to 2 terms JLP and back to PMP and back to JLP. It has done so many times. It's like all swing states. Its swinging is determined by political and social events, like the Bruce Golding factor in 2007. That was like a comeback kid story, you know. Bruce had left the JLP, never left Parliament, go be a talk show host, form his own party, and was now coming back as leader of the JLP. It was also around that time that the voters had decided that PG had overstayed his welcome. So that was a swinging event. The Portia factor and the events that united the PMP in 2011, the Manat Phillips and Manat Phelps Phillips, and the after effects of that, combined with young Rasta Damian Crawford, those factors gave the PMP that seat in 2011. It was a PMP that after Peter Phillips challenged Portia in 2008, and the PMP was on a little brink of disunity, and then Manat Phelps and Phillips come and the great KD Knight stepped up and bam, we were back, united. There was nobody there trying to undermine anybody. Nobody undermined the leader. The leader wasn't sidelining anybody. Everybody there rode pan bus and run up and down. PMP again. Led by a great leader, Portia Lucretia Simpson Miller. East Rural is one of a handful of seats in a general election that will always be determined by events and sometimes personalities. Oliver Clue won East Rural twice. Mrs. Holness did as well, 16 and 20. Then there was Roy McGann, the PMP MP that Joan Gardner-Webley murdered. And then she won East Rural on the JLP ticket and has been trying to control it since. But God don't like ugly. God don't like ugly. What is it about East Rural? It seems to bring out the worst in these women, Mrs. Holness and Joan Gardner-Webley. What is it about East Rural? Because East Rural is just like Eastern St. Andrew and some of the seats in St. James. Them swing by events and personality. In an uneventful election with very good MPs, good economy, solid leaders, and no matter what the state of the other party is, the opposition party, in an uneventful election, a swing seat can stay in the hands of a holder for at least 2 terms until something or someone happens again. No other council division in East Rural is more swingy than the Kentyre division. That too has gone from JLP to PMP to JLP to PMP. Arnell MacDonald won it twice. Arnell MacDonald was the national treasurer for the PMP-YO, and he won it twice. Which makes it all the more worrying why Mrs. Holness, the current MP of East Rural St. Andrew, is pursuing court action against the duly elected councillor for the Kentyre division, Mrs. Brown Bond. So let's go on and see what goes on, Mrs. Holness lost the Kentyre division in the 2024 local government election by 32 votes. Ironically, she won the Mavis Bank division, which is also kind of a swingy division, by 13 votes, less than half of the Kentyre margin. I don't see nobody challenging that. You lost by a small margin, you do a recount, and if you want, you can go to a magisterial count, and at the end of the day, you lose. You accept it and you move on. So why is Mrs. Holness doing this? Why is she threatening this very thin thread that holds up our electoral system? Because it has been battered and bruised by Mark Golding and Dayton Campbell, and now she joining that bandwagon. But before we answer that question as to why she's doing this, let's take a look at the 2 PDs that is now the focus of this court battle. In preparation for this rant, I went back to 2007. There are no records of PD 82 existence in the 2007 local government elections in Kentyre. Why? That's because PD 82 never existed in Kentyre in the 2007 local government election. It existed in the Harborview division up to the 2007 election. According to the EOJ, it was after a boundary review that the PD was transferred from Harborview to Kentyre. So that realignment happened after the 2007 election, and it took effect in Kentyre in the general election of 2011. So there's no record of a local government election result of those two PDs in the 2007 election. After the realignment to Kentyre, which brought PD 82 to Kentyre, it became A and B. A is housed at the Constitution Hill Harriet School, and B's new home is at the Kentyre Community Center. The EOJ split PDs from time to time. They do it. And it mostly happens when there are too many people enumerated from one PD, and it becomes too difficult to process the large number of persons from that PD who turn out to vote on election day, when the lines were long and people waited for hours to vote. Remember those days, back when people voted? Yeah. So it is at that time that the EOJ normally split a PD. At one point, we had up to PD split up to D, Yeah, A, B, C, and D. But with the consistent low voter turnout and the lack of enthusiasm, it has watered down to A and B now. I don't see no C and D on any voters list. If there is, please somebody point it out to me. So the first election with both PDs in Kentyre was actually the 2011 general election. That was the first time that those two PDs participated in an election in Kentyre. In that election, there was a tie in the Kentyre division in the 2011 general election. When there was a swing to the PMP, there was a tie in the Kentyre division. 1776, a great year. Great year. Year of revolutions and all kind of things happening in the American Revolution. So in Kentyre, the PMP got 1776, the GLP got 1776. But in PD 82A, in that election, that very first election after the PD was moved to Kentyre, the PMP got 51 votes and the GLP got 17. In the overall division, it was a tie. In those PDs, in PDA, the PMP got 51 votes, the GLP got 7. Remember, this is the first election since the PD moved to Kentyre. In 82B, the PMP got 142 votes, and the GLP got 36. The independent candidate got 2. In the local government elections, the first local government election since the PD moved to Kentyre, the PMP polled 46 votes in A, and the GLP 4. In B, the PMP polled 112, and the GLP 9. I want to write down these numbers here. In the 2016 local government election, the PMP received 46 votes in A, and the GLP received 11. In B, Imani got 115 votes. Mrs. Holness got 46. Let me repeat that 2016 number for you guys. It's very important. In 82A, Imani got 46 votes. Mrs. Holness got 11. In B, Imani got 115 votes. Mrs. Holness received 46. 8 years later, in 2024, in PDA, the PMP got 106 votes to the GLP 20. In B, the PMP received 42 votes to the GLP 6. So let's tie this up, because this is the bone of Mrs. Holness's contention. Let's tie it up. The GLP has never won those two PDs. Never ever won those two PDs since those two PDs were created in the Kentyre division. And those two PDs moved to the Kentyre division after the local government elections of 2007. And the first time an election was held on those two PDs was in 2011. So there's 2011, 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024 that those PDs have been existent. And in all of those elections, not once did the GLP ever won those two PDs. Not once. Since the PDs were realigned to the Kentyre division, in the 3 general election, the PNP received 496 votes. The GLP received 152. The general election of 2011, the general election of 2016, and the general election of 2020 combined, the PNP got 496 votes, the GLP got 152. In 11, PNP got 193 votes, GLP got 53. In 2016, PNP got 161 votes, GLP got 57. In 2020, PNP got 142 votes and the GLP got 42. So even in a swing election where there are events and personalities and stuff going on, the PNP still win those two PDs. If you combine the results of the local government elections that have been held since the PDs have been in Kentyre, the PNP have received 420 votes to the GLP 77. That's what you call donkey lengths. There is nothing strange about the numbers as they were from 2011 to 2024. It's the 106 to 20 in PDA that is frightening for Mrs. Holness. So let's look at when the numbers peaked. The numbers peaked high in 2024. And that's what frightening her. She has never seen that higher number, 106 to 20 in PDA. But in PDA, PNP got 46. PDB, PNP get a big number. The numbers peak in 2024, and it's not strange, Mrs. Holness. It is an anomaly. It's not a usual number. Just like how some people get elected out of the blue in the local government election. Nobody even know them. People don't even know who they voted for, but they got elected. People were told that they are going to vote out Brogard. And since Mrs. Holness is Mrs. Brogard, the number makes sense. 106 people decided to vote out Brogard and Mrs. Brogard. The number makes sense. It is 4 times the GLP numbers, yes. Usually it's about 2.5, 3. But this was a strange 2024 election, an anomaly of an election, where a whole host of people, some who have been on the voters list for a while, but have not voted, and most of them who just recently went on the voters list and think that somebody needs to blame Brogard for all their collective ills that is plaguing them. And so they went to vote out Brogard. And Mrs. Brogard got a good beating out of it. So they went to vote out the Brogards. For Mrs. Holness to suggest otherwise is an insult to the voters of Kentyre. It's an assault on our elections. But here's a kicker that renders Mrs. Holness' judicial adventure pointless, careless, and dangerous. Even when the GLP win Kentyre, the PNP always win PD 88, 82A, and 82B. I said that up top, I just wanted to repeat it. There's not one instance where GLP won any or both of these PDs since they have moved to Kentyre. So why Mrs. Holness chose these locations to be the bone of her contention? In Mark Golding's general elections, wet dream. Because Mark Golding was dreaming and having an orgasm, that's a general election, and he's going to win. In his scenario, Mrs. Holness lost East Rural St. Andrew, according to the election results. By a handful of votes, yes, but enough. And these two PDs would have been that breaking point for her. And that would explain why she's targeting these PDs. Mrs. Holness feels that she's losing power and she's losing control. And it's not something that Mrs. Holness can handle because she's having serious issues in her constituency. She's losing people, she's panicking, and her panicking is what is driving her to make these irrational decisions to go ahead and try to undermine our elections that are free and fair. Our people over in Russia are calling her a bully. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that woman a bully, man. How many are big? Well, me now go tell you now some of the things I'm saying. That's why I just use the words that are kinder. Bully, disrespectful, not having any manners, talk to people like she and them are quabs, something to that effect. Behave like she's a she-god. I'm going to use that another time too. As a one young woman said that. She just walk around the place and behave like she's a she-god. Nobody can talk, nobody not no right, nobody have no this. She feel go man. Anyway. Mrs. Holness' reaction to the loss is an indication of her vulnerability and how she's taking the loss. She lost one of her seats and she can't handle it. It is the spirit. It is driving her mad. She not only lost that, she almost lost Mavis Bank. I mean, she's climbing up a wall. She's vulnerable now. Very vulnerable. And like all persons, all politicians who gain power through the channels of entitlement and cronyism and nepotism, yeah, them can't handle vulnerability. Because they never gain it the right way. They never gain the power the right way. They got power through a channel or because of something. Because I am this or because I know this or because I'm related to this or that person. And so they don't know how to behave when they lose. Her desires to be leader of the JLP is a driving force for all her actions, which I believe will not only eventually hurt the JLP and its attempt at a third term, but she will be out of a job as well. Questioning the result of a fairly held election is questioning the integrity of the entire system. So you can target 2 PD and you're going to want the 2 PD them run over. You are questioning the integrity of the entire system. You are questioning the presiding officer, not only the EOJ, but you're questioning the presiding officers who preside over those elections in those PDs. You're questioning the indoor agent, your own duly appointed indoor agent, who's basically your eyes and your ears and your candidate in those seats, in those polling stations. When I was young, I used to be an indoor agent. My mother told me that the indoor agent is a candidate. The indoor agent is a party leader. The indoor agent is the chairman and the general secretary and everything. The indoor agent is the PMP. The indoor agent is the GLP. And if there's an independent candidate, and that indoor agent is the independent candidate. Because everything that you do in that polling station is for the party, for the candidate, and it's you alone in there. Nobody else is there with you to help you. So you alone around things. So Mrs. Holness is suggesting now that her duly appointed indoor agents were lacking. She questioning them integrity and them credibility as indoor agents. The 2 GLP indoor agents for PD 82A and 82B. She's suggesting that them sit down and make some hanky-panky take place. She suggesting that the 2 of them sit down in there and make all kind of things happen and people who vote shouldn't vote. That is what she's suggesting. So those 2 indoor agents is the first point of contact. Want to know what happened? Why Mrs. Holness would feel that one was in there behaving slack. PMP indoor agents and said, not go on in a lie. Not go on in there. People come in and people vote. People up on the voters list. Everything went smoothly. Nobody ever quarreled with nobody. Everybody come with them ID. Everybody that worked at that station gave the same information. Because you're questioning your cluster managers as well, you know. And you're questioning the poll clerk from the electoral office. How dare you question the integrity of our election day workers? Do you know how hard it is for election day workers to sit in that polling station all day? Or for a cluster manager to be run up and down in the sun at all day? And taking crap from people? Voters who feel them power on election day. Because you know voters cocky on election day. Them feel them power. Them is it. And you better talk to them good. And you're questioning these people. your representatives in the polling station, because they would be the first person to talk to. That's the last line of defense. That's the last line of defense. You prepare for elections for months. You train workers. You build voters list. You do all kinds of things. Your last line of defense, the brain of your operation, are the people who sit at that desk to oversee and monitor voting on behalf of their party. And you, Mrs. Holness, questioning them. So the JLP and the PMP agents, them have to fess up. So I ask a question. Does Mrs. Holness know what she's doing? Is it just about the numbers? Or is it the list? What is Mrs. Holness contending? That the lists were wrong? That somebody switched the list? That bogus people come vote with bogus ID? What is she suggesting? Because none of it is good. No matter which one you choose to say that she's suggesting, it is a downgrading and a questioning of our electoral system. It's a questioning of the people who are in those polling stations representing both parties. So I don't know. What are you doing, Mrs. Holness? What are you doing? Your ego is bruised because you lose. You lost the seat. You lost the seat by 32 votes. And you nearly lose Mavis Bank. And now you're losing your mind. All of this is your problem, it's your issue. Nobody caused this on you. It's you caused it on yourself. It's Mrs. Holness caused this on herself. Remember telling her she was all over the country up and down in people's constituencies and people's division, trying to bring going on with all kind of brinksmanship and one-upmanship and gameswomanship and all kind of partisanship. She was just all over the place going on with all kind of things and not paying attention to her own constituency. But even so, the people in her own constituency now war with her. They've been a war with her. A good set of people. People of influence too. People who, when she came in, she and them a body. Them up in arms against her. One should go talk to some of them. Find out what is them issue. Who the woman eh? How man they want bully. Yes, how she Okay, you know You know, workers and voters and people in the constituency that have no respect for MPs when they talk about them behind them back. You know that, right? And they know them are go beyond all lines, but cross all lines when they attack. Questioning the integrity of the EOJ, pouring cynicism and scorn on our very, very good electoral system. Are we not learning any lessons here? Are we not learning any lessons from international community? Look at the US and what Trump has done. A third of the American voting public support Trump. A third, at least 32%. And they support his attempt to tear down the electoral system, which they participate in. They believe him. That dead people vote. Kind of people who Mark want to vote. And maybe Mark was just setting that up for tear down the system as well. They believe that Joe Biden didn't win, Trump won, and them take it from him. Them who? Sheamus, Ruby Freeman, those two brave election workers down in Georgia, who have to leave them home because people are terrorizing them to kill them because they did their job. You know, people have to go in hiding. You know how much threat people's lives face when all of that started with Trump? The governor of Michigan, everybody have to get increased security. Up until about November last year. Some states were having problems getting back their election workers. People found the courage. The American system is on tethers. It is shaky. And we depend on the Americans to uphold certain standards for themselves as an example to the rest of the world. But Mark Golding, Dayton Campbell, and Mrs. Juliet Holness is now experimenting with that. They might try a thing to see if them thing could work. Mark Golding had gone out and said that them not gonna give up power so easy, you know. So we have to take it to them. We have to deal with them wicked. I don't know if this man never realized what he was promoting is political violence. Things that we know about already. Some of us have lived through it. How vicious that was. Where you couldn't go to a market. Because people see you and just brand you. And decide to kill you. Or a man know a man from jungle. Or a man know a man from a Jews land. See a woman in a market a sell and she not come from no labor right here. So I run away from market. When they don't remember. So Mrs. Holness and Dayton Campbell and Mark Golding is experimenting with that. It's not a good look. It is not. It is not a good look. Not at all. Mrs. Holness needs to draw brakes on her quest to prove something that may backfire on her. Matter of fact, I'm convinced it's going to backfire on her if she proceeds with it. Because should she continue down this lane, where the end result is a rerun of these PDs, there will be no off-plank for Mrs. Holness. She will lose, and she will lose badly. And if she thinks she's having a breakdown now, she should think about what that would look like should she be successful to have those PDs rerun. Because she cannot win. She will not win. The numbers say so. Mrs. Holness is hurt. She's bruised. Her ego is hurt. She's feeling a little grumpy. Because she should have gone home back with all her divisions. And then she get to continue to have control of her mayor. So those things really galling her. She didn't have the control of the mayor. Because, I mean, the former mayor was her guy. She was his handler. And she didn't have the backup plan. So, of course, it hurting her real, real bad. So I don't know what she's trying to do. To get a rerun, get a win, to install back her mayor. That's not going to happen. So why is Mrs. Holness pursuing this path? Why is she pursuing this path? She's pursuing this path because she saw what Mark Golding and Dayton Campbell did. She heard what they said. So she got to try a thing too. And this is how we get dictators and anarchy. This is how we lose all our rights. Our right to vote. It's a very, very privileged thing. I mean, it is one of the most privileged things that mankind could ever have. The right to choose who your leaders are going to be. And based on the low voter turnout and the lack of enthusiasm of voters. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? One vote. One normal dege vote can decide a seat. So we, the voting public, we're powerful people. And you out there, the Jamaican voters, don't treat this lightly. Don't have people step on your constitutional and God-given right. That when you go out and vote to elect somebody, they want to overturn it because it don't suit them. Don't do that. Ms. Holness, it's not going to end well if she continues. So those of you who listen to this and have any kind of influence with Mrs. Holness, Pass this on to her and advise her wisely. Tell her to leave our electoral system. It works. She lost. Pick up her marbles and go home. Go wheel and come again. Go build back. Go find out why your people them have so much angst against you. Some people literally say them hate you, Mrs. Holness. That's not a word that I like at all. It's a mean word. It's a terrible word. But them say so. So you have to think twice about this. All right? I love my country. God bless Jamaica land we love. Big up the electoral office. I pray that God will continue to guide and protect them and show them the way to keep this system honest. One man, one woman, one vote. God bless you all. Stay safe, everybody. Keep the children safe.